Hey, it's Scott Jordan and Mark Warner for the Thursday, December 17th COVID update. Hey, Mark, let's get these off because we are obviously socially distanced. But hey, before we get into the COVID, let's talk about the Snowmageddon. So those of you that are watching this program in the summertime or the spring, you won't remember this, but this today and tonight is going to be the worst winter storm in the history of 2020 in this area, and that's because we didn't have any other storms.
Well, that's true. And in fact, they're saying actually it's going to be the worst storm in 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
But I like calling it the storm of the century. I think that's your best line.
Yeah, and I can tell you, I have a snowblower in my shed that's never had gas put in it because I got it a year and a half ago. So that's probably right, the worst storm in the last 2 years because we haven't had a storm in 2 years, right?
Yeah, exactly right. So for all the folks that are watching, just so you know what we're referring to, it's this northeastern blowdown that's going to hit 20 inches of snow in parts of Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
It's certainly the middle part of the state and down near Route 95 and towards the metropolitan Philadelphia area, about half that. Yep. So, yeah, it looks like a big one coming.
So it's perfect timing because, Mark, I know you've been working with one of our sales reps, Mel Dean, on a new product. You want to tell us briefly a little bit about that, and then we'll post some pictures on the web after we put the video up.
Well, we've always had a product called liquid ice melt, and that was a product that was used that could be applied to existing ice on the concrete, a ready-to-use product. And one of the things that we've been asked for is a product that could be used as a pre-treat well in advance of a storm so that school custodians or university building and grounds managers could go out and pre-treat the sidewalks prior to a storm. So we've created a concentrated liquid ice melt pre-treat, which we call Yeti. You didn't know we call it Yeti, but that's the nickname in the lab.
So that could get us in some trouble, maybe.
So it's a concentrate, meaning that it can be diluted out, which makes it very cost-effective to pre-treat with. And we're going through testing right now, which is why we ordered this storm.
Yep. And the concept is similar to what they do nowadays with the brining of the highways, but beyond that.
Way beyond that, yeah. So this is really made for maybe private parking lots and sidewalks, essentially the entranceway and leading out maybe 50 feet beyond an entranceway. So that way you're not tracking in pellets and granular material into your building.
Yeah, and it's also going to help prevent the ice from adhering to the concrete itself. So hypothetically, it's going to make it easier for cleanup after the fact as well.
Well, some of the other applications that people don't necessarily think about, but the handrails, metal handrails will tend to freeze up and ice up. Yep. And it's great wipe down pre-treatment for handrails. It's perhaps ideal for different types of equipment that has gearing on it.
Yep.
That sometimes the gearing freezes up. And so it's a nice application for that too. I know in the past, we've done some testing on some ski resorts where they were looking to make sure that all the gearing as it relates to the hinging of the chairlifts and so on were kept free from icing up. In fact, I know Jack Collins did some testing on some snowcats to work out. And that was, the limitation on it was that it dried out rather quickly because it had an ingredient that was made to help it penetrate existing ice. What we did with this pre-treatment is we steered away from that and went with something that was more concentrated, would stay wet and on the surface much, much longer without worrying about trying to penetrate existing ice. The idea is to prevent ice from forming in the first place or from adhering. So pretty cool product. And Mel Dean has got totes of it going out. So people are pretty excited.
So we'll have the results of our testing. Mark did an application at his facility, as we want to call it, and I did one here as well. So we'll compare notes on that. But hey, let's get to the COVID thing because I'm getting kind of annoyed, Mark. And I was venting earlier. And
this doesn't have anything to do with the Eagles, does it?
No.
Okay, just checking.
The Eagles we're going all the way, just like the Jets. We didn't really lose those games. It was the NFL scored them incorrectly.
Yeah, there you go. There you
But
go.
we talked about COVID fatigue before, and now I think we're moving into a different phase of COVID fatigue. And I'm thinking maybe that's something to do with the vaccines coming on board. But I'm really kind of annoyed that people are just like saying, geez, do we have to keep wearing a mask? And like, what's the point? And I'm fine. Why do I have to wear a mask? And I think they're missing the whole point of the concept of trying to contain this thing. And go ahead, Mark.
It angers me a lot. And when I see people not wearing a mask or I hear those comments, all I think is how damn selfish those people are. Because I wear a mask not to protect myself, but protect those that are around me, my friends, my family, my kids, and the people I work with that I care about. That's why I wear a mask. I'm less worried about my own health and more worried about those around me. So when I hear comments about somebody not wear a mask, I think, how damn not only irresponsible, but selfish is that?
Yeah.
So that's my comment on that, Scott. I know I could go on and get angry about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like, 300,000 people have died in the United States. I mean, how is that not something you should be taking seriously? I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well, one of the things that I've noticed is that people don't start to take it serious until somebody they know or care about gets sick and or dies. And at that point, they completely change their attitude towards it. But there are still areas up in the northern part of the United States where they're having anti-mask gatherings. And, those crowds are actually getting smaller and smaller, probably because more and more people are having a personal impact by it.
Yeah.
Somebody they know, somebody they care about got it, and all of a sudden they realize this is real.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, it's just incredibly irresponsible for people to be running around without any care about trying to prevent the spread of COVID-19.
Right. Yeah. And then some of we have a article that you shared with me from McKinsey company that they're predicting, they're a business analyst company, and they're saying we're not going to be mask free until this time next year.
Yeah, the report stated that they're expecting the mask to be required or highly suggested straight through November of 2021. That doesn't surprise me. I know that there's been a lot of conversations about live conferences and trade shows in the spring of 2021, and everyone that I know of has been pushed back beyond the second half or beyond the first half of next year. So I don't think we're going to see a lot of face-to-face conferences or trade shows January through June of 2021. And as a result of that, I think everybody's going to be pretty much preoccupied with wearing masks during that time. I suspect when we get to July 1st, the second half of 2021, that might be a chance to reevaluate what's happening. Yeah. But the other thing to think about, Scott, and it causes me to pause and think about it, is the United States is running through a spike right now. It's escalating.
Yeah.
We're the only country on planet Earth that's going up. All the other countries are going down.
Yeah.
And so they're going to come out of this before the United States does. And the reason that they're saying that is because their populace is they're adopting these patterns of social distancing and mask wearing much more aggressively than Americans are. And that's it's a sad statement, really, about Americans. We're allowing this thing to increase. The rest of the world's got a handle on it, and the rest of the world, including Italy and China and some of the places that had some massive outbreaks, including Denmark, Scott. We talked about Denmark. They're all dropping in cases, and we're spiking, and it's the rest of the world looks at it like it's an American thing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a sad statement.
Yep. So one of the things we're doing here at Bullen is we're doing a check each morning. Then all the employees come in, have to sign off that they haven't been with anybody that has COVID, family members. They don't have any symptoms. But if you do have somebody in your facility, you should do the research ahead of time for your particular state as to what the rules are and what the procedures are. In our case, if we had an outbreak here, we don't have to close the place down, but we have to up our game monitoring what each employee, how they're feeling, and we'll probably have to do thermometer checks. I was yesterday at a dermatologist, and I get scanned every time I go in. So that's one of the steps required if you've had somebody in your facility or your business have an actual outbreak.
Well, they have the thermal guns. Essentially, they look like a gun, but they're really just a handheld instrument.
Yep.
And you point it towards the center of your forehead and just click it, and it gives you a reading of the surface temperature. And anything over 100.4 is considered a danger zone. So as long as you're under 100.4, you're not considered to be infectious with COVID, because there's different things that causes somebody's body temperature to elevate a little.
Yeah.
But when it goes beyond 100.4, that's the flag. That's in sailing, that's called the telltale. So at that point, that's where you have to assume that there's a COVID infection involved, and then go through those priorities. At that point, get out of Dodge, quarantine for 14 days, contact those you've been in contact with, those kinds of things. I think what we're going to see down the road, Scott, is that organizations do have some degree of secondary or tertiary exposure. Basically, what I mean by that is it's not maybe a direct contact, but somebody had direct contact and you were in contact with them. As this thing expands, it's going to be more and more of us that are impacted either at a secondary or tertiary level. And I think what we're going to see people doing is moving into not just logging in with signatures, but also doing a thermal scan on their forehead and writing down the temperature reading of the scan as they entered their buildings. And, I think that's what we're going to see is somewhat of a normal protocol for businesses that have an incident where there's a potential or actual COVID exposure.
Yeah. Well, so how do we kind of in closing out here, how do we keep people from getting into that COVID fatigue funk number 2?
How do we keep them from doing that?
Yeah.
Well, what'll happen is Mother Nature's going to take care of that. If you remember 6 Degrees of Separation, starring Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
But I mean, essentially, as this thing continues to expand, 300,000 people have died and millions infected by it. At some point, literally every American will know somebody who knows somebody that's had it and been impacted by it. And that creates that seriousness. You and I have joked about the fact that people get into a paradigm, they don't want to adopt new changes or changes in their patterns until pain or pleasure presents itself. So people will make a change because it's pleasurable to them, but people will also make a change because there's pain associated with not making that change. And so I do believe that as things tend to expand and people start to realize that they know others that have been impacted, they'll take it upon it a little bit more serious. And honestly, that's that little bit of pain, I suppose, that people will need to feel in order to change their paradigms and change their habits.
Yeah, it's a shame, but let's hope the pain isn't too bad. So next week is our last week here before we close. Those of you that don't know, Bullen and our operational thing, we normally close between Christmas and New Year's to do inventory as well as machine update. In fact, we're process of installing a new quart line right now and a new bag-in-a-box line. You can see that there's some pictures of that on the Bullen site. So we are going to be closed after next Wednesday, but we are going to do a COVID update next week, and then we'll be on somewhat vacation for the week after, and then we'll be back the first week of January. So,
So we may be commuting into work on sleighs, and we may be wearing red hats. I don't know.
well, and hopefully our sidewalks will be ice-free. Uh, so I think that's it for today. Other than I'm mad, I don't like people that don't appreciate the seriousness of the situation for whatever reason. And let's hope people's minds kind of get changed a little bit, right?
Well, I think the good news is that people don't know what they don't know. And it's not because they're stupid or dumb. It's because they don't know what they don't know. And as people become more educated and more knowledgeable about this, I think they'll adopt the right kind of patterns that it takes to get rid of it. And the same can be said about the vaccine, Scott. There's a lot of people that are showing resistance to the vaccine or fear to it.
Yeah.
But again, it's because they don't know what they don't know. And if you've researched the vaccine and the amazing amount of science that's gone into that, you wouldn't at all to be first in line to get that vaccine, because any kind of sore arm sure beats dying from COVID.
Yeah. Well, on that note, thank you very much for tuning in, and keep an eye out for the Snowmageddon if you're on the East Coast, anywhere from Washington and above and out to Ohio or so. One storm's coming from this direction, other storm's coming from that direction. They're going to merge together, and boom, we're going to get, we'll probably get nothing. But
well, you never know. It's kind of like one of those trains that leaves from New York at 30 miles an hour. Another train leaves from LA at 62 miles an hour, and somewhere around Kansas City they meet, I guess, right?
Yeah. Well, let's hope it doesn't meet right in front of the Bullen plant or wherever you are out there, the people viewing. So thanks again for tuning in, and sorry to be kind of a downer on the COVID fatigue thing, but I think it's important. So let me get my my mask back on, and we can get back out.
Get back to work, right?
Back to work. See you all next week.
Thanks, everybody.